All right, I got a story about my Corsair headphones here.
Was that like brought on by my whatever the fuck that was?
No, it was brought on by me not hearing certain starts of sentences from you.
What?
So I got these Corsair headphones for Christmas. They're pretty expensive headphones.
Okay.
They're like one of the higher tier, if not the highest tier of headphones that Corsair makes.
Okay.
It came with this dongle,
Yep.
which is I think a 2.4 gigahertz dongle,
Okay.
which I had been using since Christmas.
Okay.
When I started using these headphones, I noticed that if things went too long, where the audio had like dropped below a certain decibel,
Okay.
it would just cut it out. It's
Noise
almost like
gate.
it's trying to, cancel unwanted feedback or hum or any of that kind of stuff. Or it just thinks like, oh, there's no audio playing, so I'm going to shut off to conserve power.
Sure. Okay.
It's doing something like that. And I can't find anything in the settings to fix that. I see people complaining about it online. No one really seems to have the solution. One guy's like, I went to my router and changed my router to change the gigahertz to the way there's bands. I'm like, I'm not doing that. That's a ridiculous thing to do.
Well, the thing you're describing sounds like it's programmatically happening. That's not bands messing up.
Because if I play music and it's at a fairly good volume, it doesn't just cut out. It's not like that, right?
Right, exactly.
But if me and Aaron are playing Civilization and it's just got that background kind of like chatter of the towns and maybe some drums or something playing, typical Civilization background music. But I keep it pretty low because I want to hear Aaron talking to me.
Yeah, of course.
And so when Aaron's not talking, all audio cuts out.
Oh, so it cuts out the game as well. It's not.
Yeah.
I was a little worried because I've tuned this microphone and I was about to say one of the issues that I was playing with when I was tuning it was the attack and the release of a noise gate, trying to get that, and I ended up just like algorithmically doing it and not using a noise gate. But like the beginnings of my sentences, I got it to the point where like they weren't quite cut off, but it just didn't sound natural. It was just sort of like it was like and today, like it was very like right when I started speaking. So I thought that's what was happening. This thing's actually so the reason why I mentioned that is this thing that you're talking about, this dongle, this headset, is doing the same thing that I was doing intentionally, where I was like trying to like make it so that my breath noises weren't as apparent, background noise wasn't as apparent, easier to edit. I also have a compressor on my voice if I yell, things like that. It's like it's applying those properties, maybe not the compressor, but the noise gate assuredly. It's applying those, and no one's talking about that. Like that's crazy because like people play strategy games on PC. Why would it do that? Like why would it shut off certain sounds?
It's not certain sounds. I think it's if it's below a certain level. If it's not loud enough, it thinks it's like audio that's not meant to be coming through.
Yeah, like it's noise gating it.
Yeah, so it's trying to kill it. But I want that audio to come through. I just wanted to play whatever is playing.
If Aaron talks, so like okay, let's just hypothetically say you're playing Civ, and Aaron says hello to you, whatever. There's some greetings. You guys are done talking for a little bit. Game begins. How long does it take for it to mess up?
If Aaron's not talking, it probably happens within like 10 seconds.
And then if Aaron talks, does the other audio come back?
All audio comes back, but it's like there's a delay, right? Because it doesn't know when Aaron's going to talk. So Aaron starts talking, it receives the signal, and it's like, oh Christ, there's audio back, and then it turns the volume back up.
That's a noise gate's attack and release.
Yeah,
that's 100%. That's what that is.
But it's like it's just one of those situations where it's like you're trying too hard to make my life better, and you're making it worse. Just give me the audio that is coming out of my system. I'll deal with it if it's too loud or too quiet or whatever, or the drain on the battery. I don't know what it's doing it for, but at least give me the option to turn it off, and I can't find that in the IQ settings.
What sucks too is there's multiple levels in which, like, I'm noise canceling myself now. I'm doing that at the wavelength level, and I'm sending you a specific feed. It's the stream feed out to you, and that's also what I'm recording in Audacity. Well, now it's going through your headphones, and it's also trying. Now the headphones are trying to do that. It's like we have too many places now where our audio is being manipulated.
My dad recently bought an audio receiver. It was $1,000 Yamaha audio receiver, and it has like built-in AirPlay and stuff, and all these nice new features and things. It's a really nice system. Sounds fantastic. But when we AirPlay music to it from like Apple Music, it has like this audio volume protection like built into it. And so I have now in our house, we have volumes on the wall for the speaker.
Yep.
The receiver itself has volume.
Right.
And then the phone has volume.
Okay.
So we have all these three things we got to manage. Now, and our old receiver was just kind of like a basic 90s or early 2000s receiver. It just played whatever you sent it, you know? You set the volume, you forget about it. We never touched the volume on that damn thing. This one though, it's like it's constantly trying to like stop the audio from like going too high and blowing out your speakers, which sounds nice, but the complications it has is if you know what you're doing, it's now getting in the way. So we'll be playing music and I'll turn up the volume on the receiver to the volume we want. As soon as you hit the volume on your phone, it drops the receiver volume back down to like the default.
Oh, that's infuriating.
And it's just like, yeah, every time you try to change the volume from your phone, it's just like I got to battle with this thing. You know?
I like systems that do things for you, but I'm a big fan of having profiles. And I'm a big fan of either profiles where you can say, yeah, do everything for me, or kind of bugger off kind of thing, or like a toggle switch where it's like, help me and do everything for me. Oh, I didn't like that. Okay, turn off all your stuff and like let me go in and set all my volumes and everything else.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what it is too is like you and I have discussed, like there's a lot of tech now that doesn't tell you what it's doing. So you'll be like, is it reconnecting? And you have no idea. This gives you the same vibe.
Yeah. But so I'm trying one thing with my headphones. I obviously I showed you the dongle, so I'm not using that clearly.
Right.
I switched it over to Bluetooth. I did see someone say that might fix it. That this might be a thing with the dongle that does this. I don't know.
Wait, so there are people talking about it.
Yeah, but no one's really found a solution. Everyone's like saying certain things, but no one's not saying like you did it. That's the one that fixed it. That I've not found that yet.
Has anyone called it a noise gate outright?
Not really, no.
Because like that is, I mean, I'm sure I could be wrong, but that is telltale noise gate 100%. And the only reason why I'm so familiar with it is because I was literally just playing with it this week for like a couple hours, and all that stuff is noise gate stuff. Threshold, attack, the level of which you're noise gating, how quickly it releases, how quickly it attacks. Like I already mentioned, attack, how quickly it attacks the sound. And then there's issues with like if you say a word where if you split up words for dramatic effect, like if I go Ryan Johnson is here, it'd be like Ryan Onson is here. Like it'll mess that up, right?
Yeah. All right. Well, that's enough of my ranting about audio.
Time for you to switch to SteelSeries.
It might be a wireless thing in general. I don't know. Well, I guess your headphones don't do that. Although you're not using SteelSeries. What do you got? You're wired in.
These are just my AKGs.
This guy's wired in over here.
Well, I when I record podcasts, I just plug it into my microphone so I can monitor it.
Yeah. All right, Matt. Did I say welcome? Stay with Pat Podcast, episode 516.
You did now.
I'm your host, Ryan Johnson. Matt Lawrence is here.
I am.
And we are not professional reviewers of audio equipment.
Oh God, no! I just I mean, at least I literally said what I did. I spent 2 hours on it. So someone out there's like, I spent 400. Yeah, well, you're probably better than I would hope.
All right, Matt. We're gonna start us off with video game fun facts. Take it away,
man. This was a doozy. So the actual fun fact is like pretty simple and all that, but I did my research prior. This is just a bit of a personal problem. I did my research prior, and then we were getting together for the show, and I was like, oh man, I'll come on and I'll just like quickly type up my research. And then I fell down a rabbit hole because they were mentioning NES games and in-game NES games. And I was like, wait, that's not possible in a GBA, is it? And then there was mention of like using like a GBA or like a Game Boy player for a GameCube and all this. And I fell down this huge rabbit hole. So I've kind of like drawn that back. I've simplified this fun fact just because I feel like that information is like totally cool. But it doesn't kind of get to the point of what this thing is. So this week's fun fact is about the GBA eReader. So I did not know this thing existed. However, it has a pretty familiar looking to me logo for the eReader thing. So I've probably seen the box in like a Walmart when I was a kid. But the Nintendo eReader is an official add-on for the Game Boy Advance. It is a hardware accessory that plugs into the cartridge slot of a GBA, just like a normal game. But it sticks out of the top. So I'm talking about like a traditional GBA, not an SP. Plug that thing in, and then this thing will stick out the top. And it has a card swipe reader. So basically, it's like a card swipe scanner, whatever you want to call it. Basically, it's like what you would see when magnetic strips were really popular on credit cards. except they weren't magnetic strips. These e-readers were encoded using dot code, which was a specialized barcode tech that was licensed from the Olympus Corporation. Each card could have 1 or 2 sets of dot code on them, and depending on what you were doing, sometimes you had to use multiple cards. You weren't limited just by the 1 or 2 sets of dot code per card. So players would, of course, swipe cards into this thing in order to unlock special in-game content, or sometimes even play full games, arguably most famously the NES collection, which I'll get to in a minute. You could even connect this thing to a GameCube via a GBA link cable to unlock specific rewards. And in North America, I found this to be most famously mentioned in the 2002 GameCube version of Animal Crossing. But the Japanese version of Animal Crossing, which goes by a different name, of course, there's a couple of them for GameCube. It also worked on those versions as well. So the e-reader was released first in Japan. It was released in Japan on December of 2001. And later on the next year, not quite a full year later, in North America in September of 2002. And there were actually 2 versions of the e-reader. Now, in North America, there was only one version, and so I'll explain that. So the original e-reader had no link cable port. This version was only released in Japan. And then a second version came out with the link cable port. This was called the e-reader Plus, and this was released in Japan as well, but then also Australia and North America. And it contained a link cable port that allowed you to connect to the GameCube as well as other GBA games. Now, most famously, from what I could tell, maybe from a collector's standpoint and also from an interest standpoint for me, there was a set of cards that was released called the NES Collection, so the NES Collection. And this allowed players to actually play NES games on their GBA. So they basically, I saw a picture of them on Reddit, and it looked like booster packs of various cards that you'd get, like a Yu-Gi-Oh cards or whatever, but they were NES games. And each of these packs would have a certain game inside them. And each game required you to scan 5 cards before they were playable. The first card would have some flavor description as well as an instruction on how to use the controls. Second card would be instructions on how to play the game. The third card would tell you how the game would score you and would also include any potential warnings if the game had any. The fourth card would give you some tips, or if there were multiple modes in the game, it would tell you about those point breakdowns in those additional modes. And then the fifth card would give you additional tips or item descriptions. And then, of course, the game was then playable. The cards were released in in 3 different series, and each of these series contained different games. I'm not going to go through the whole list, but the series were released on September 16th, 2002, second series on November 12th, 2002, and the third series was in 2003 on April 21st. Now, what's kind of crazy about this is that somebody is actually still making games for this. So not the NES, not the NES collection, but I found this really interesting article, which turned me onto this thing because I didn't know this e-reader existed. It's on timeextension.com. I really like this site. It's like retro game news. But now there are several homebrew titles currently in development for the Game Boy Advance's e-reader. And I'm just reading this right from the site here. These games are from the developer Matt Greer, better known online as retro.cards. And yeah, he's basically making a set of games for the e-reader. You can follow retro.cards on Blue Sky to see like a little video of what he's done here. He also has a website listed here at retro.cards.com. And when I say dot, I mean the actual word. So like RETRO, then DOTCARDS.com. So it's kind of cool. Just like some random little Easter egg that I found when I was doing the research for this. But back to Animal Crossing. Animal Crossing, I actually got Ryan to help me with this because I fell down the rabbit hole when we were trying to put the show together and I would have still been here reading. So Animal Crossing had a whole bunch of cards. Like I think it said something like over 200 cards. And so at the end of the day here, scanning cards could gift players with special in-game items like clothing and furniture. And this is where I fell down the rabbit hole. They were mentioning NES games. And I was like, what do you mean by NES games? Like, we're in a game. What do you mean by NES games? Now, I want to be clear here. This is the GameCube version of Animal Crossing. So you're scanning on the GBA, and then you have your link cable connected, and you're scanning on the GBA, you're following prompts, you're doing all this thing to get these items to show up. But then you can also, in some versions of Animal Crossing, you can get you can get like full NES games to actually play within Animal Crossing. And what I think held me up here was I thought they were talking like, because there was the NES collection, which you play on the GBA itself, I thought, oh, this must be that. But then it's like, well, no, it's within Animal Crossing. But then I was like, well, hang on, there's no Animal Crossing for the GBA. And then why are we're emulating the NES inside of an Animal Crossing that I didn't realize existed on a GBA? Like, how powerful was the GBA? So I just like fell down this like rabbit hole. But anyway, thankfully Ryan helped me pull myself out of there. Another title away from the rabbit hole was Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire. So in Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire, you could scan new trainers in the game and battle them on Trainer Hill or Mauville. Hopefully I'm saying that correctly, Mauville City. So after you've scanned these trainers into the game, they would appear in a specific area meant for these battles. And some trainers even had customized Pokemon with special movesets. There was also Pokemon Coliseum. So Pokemon Coliseum, these are Japan-only cards, unfortunately. This functionality was not in other versions of the game. But these Japan-only cards would unlock battles as well as Pokemon. So scanning specific cards would allow the player to battle specific trainers or even get Pokemon with special moves. And this isn't a comprehensive list. Like there's, this thing did other things. I'm not going to go down a whole table of it did, and in this game it did this, and in this game it did this. There's lists you can find online if you're interested in maybe even collecting these cards, because this thing was like not all that successful. So if you notice when I was mentioning earlier, I mentioned Japan, I mentioned Australia, and I mentioned North America. I absolutely did not mention Europe. And that's because this thing was kind of like teased, like, yeah, it's coming out in Europe, it's coming out in Europe, it's coming out. Nah, no, it didn't, unfortunately. So in 2004, Nintendo's head of PR confirmed that the eReader would not be releasing in Europe, which was a little unfortunate. And this was a bit of a, again, confusing time for players because it's like mixed messaging, like, yeah, it's releasing. Don't worry, it's coming out. It's not coming out kind of thing. The thing is, though, is this thing wasn't like a complete flop. So a lot of the things that I've been covering in the fun facts have been sort of things that have come out and they really haven't been super, super popular. That's the case here, but not really in Japan. So the eReader was actually considered successful in Japan. In North America, though, it was kind of a rare item. Not many people bought it. It just wasn't really popular. And so it was actually discontinued in early 2004 due to that lack of popularity, but just in North America. In Japan, this thing actually sold pretty well and was continually produced up until the discontinuation of the Game Boy hardware line, which is quite a long time because you have to think, like, I'm talking about a GBA regular, like the normal. We're talking GBA regular, GBA SP, and then also the Game Boy Micro. So this thing was quite popular. Now, one small thing I want to mention is I was on the Wikipedia during my research, and I saw some pretty ridiculous pictures. So I implore you, if you're interested in this, to go check it out, because if you're familiar at all with the GBA family, you know that they all have different form factors. So the GBA is sort of I want to call it like a taco shape, I guess you could even call it. But the Game Boy Advance SP was a clamshell design that closed up. And there's a picture of the GBA SP with the e-reader plugged in, but the link, what I think is the link cable 6-pin connector, isn't in the same spot as it is on the GBA. So on the GBA, the cartridge slot is on the top, and so is that extra port, that 6-pin connector. That's not the case on the SP. So when you plug this thing into the cartridge slot, that 6-pin connector just goes above and sits within where the clamshell would close. So this thing does work, but it's still kind of weird. Like, it's a little bit crazy. And also there's a mention here, and I didn't like dive into this because this is super niche, but some people were saying that on the Wikipedia that you could connect this e-reader to a GameCube that was using a Game Boy player. Now, that GameCube would act as a Game Boy, and then you could link to another GameCube if you wanted to, do the integration with the Animal Crossing on GameCube. So you could use a GameCube kind of like a Game Boy, or acting as a Game Boy, to then empower this like Game Boy Cross companion device thing with the Animal Crossing GameCube game. And this is where I started getting, like I said, this is where I started getting really into the weeds. I was like, wait, hang on. There's all these like weird niche things and stuff like that. And that doesn't even like scratch the surface. Like I mentioned the SP, but also we have the Game Boy Micro. So the e-reader does fit into the Game Boy Micro, at least according to Wikipedia. And it has a link cable port, but not a standard connector because the Game Boy Micro is tiny. So a special Game Boy Micro Game Link cable must be used for linking features. The Game Boy Micro's non-standard link cable port cannot accept the GameCube Game Boy Advance cable, meaning it cannot link with GameCube games without modification to the cable. So now we have like another layer to this thing. So we have this pretty niche device being plugged in like what should be in a standard way, in a not standard way at all, but yet it's all in the Game Boy Advance family. It's kind of nuts. So yeah, it's a little crazy. I'll read the one little small sort of like blurb here from Wikipedia. So, and this is not about the Game Boy Micro. This is further up in the article. But once installed, the link cable connector on the Game Boy Advance is obstructed, but a pass-through connection on the e-reader allows link-up features to be used. So that's that thing I was saying where it plugs into the cartridge slot and then it covers up that other thing. The Game Boy Advance SP is also fully compatible, although the e-reader does not mount flush with the SP. As the link cable connector on the SP is unobstructed, the pass-through on the e-reader is not used. And an additional cover, and then it has, I guess, a part number here, AGB016, can be added to the e-reader in order to avoid damaging the 6-pin connector when linked to a GBA SP. So this thing is niche. This thing has a lot of little random nuances to it. I mean, if you just have a GBA, it's really simple. You plug the thing in and away you go. But this thing it just has a lot of little random things. So if you care about this, I implore you to go to the Wikipedia and learn how the heck to connect it to the hardware you have, because, and if you want it to work on GameCube and you don't want to modify stuff, then you can't use it on a Game Boy Micro. Crazy. But anyway, that's a game. If that's a game and fun fact, if I ever heard of one, that's the Game Boy e-reader. And please go check out the Wikipedia and other areas.
Pretty wild.
Or play the new games that are in development.
That's wild, yeah. That's pretty crazy. It's weird, all these weird things they used to do, eh? I don't know if they still do it. Does it feel like they still have all these weird quirks and gimmicks and toys?
Well,
I guess. Well, I mean, we're kind of talking like the whole NFC like things, the amiibos. Those are kind of gimmicky, right? Super popular and successful, but gimmicky nonetheless.
And the AR cards, like, I mean, I know the 3DS or the DS line's dead, but like the AR cards were kind of in the same vein because you wouldn't need a scanner. You have the camera, which can scan on a 3DS.
I mean, given enough time, that could be like a video game fun fact. Although it could be for the younger generations too, who missed the Vita having those AR cards and stuff. Oh,
I forgot. Does the Vita has AR cards, doesn't it?
Yeah, I still have them. Yeah.
Oh my God, I forgot all about that. I was thinking about this the other day. I have the first edition Vita box. Like I pre-ordered it and got it a week early. Mm-hmm. And that box has been up there since the Vita came out. I haven't taken it down. So it's just been on the shelf in the same spot for all these years. I was just thinking about that the other day. I was like, man, what's in that box? And probably those cards.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well,
I can't remember what they did though. I don't remember what exactly happened when you used them.
Wasn't there like some weird? I remember there being like a mini. No, was it a mini game? Yeah, no, it wasn't a mini game. It was a full game, and there was like I'm going to use the name from Viva Pinata, a Whirlum, which is like a cartoon worm.
Okay. Yeah.
But do you remember it was like a picture? It's called like Little Deviants or some crap like that. You know what I'm talking about? And it was like I remember one of the things was there's a touchpad on the back of the Vita, and you would like touch the back, and your finger, quote unquote, would pop through onto the screen.
Oh, yeah.
And I remember that being sort of like a demo. I think I was told by the guy who sold it to me at EB Games. He's like, you should get this. Oh no, it came with that game. You should try this game right away. It's like a good demo, almost like an Astrobot of today, right? Where it's a good demo for the controller of like the DualSense. And like, I mean, it was all right, but I played it for like a level, and then I went and played something else. But
yeah.
Well, and here's another crazy thing. People have been getting the e-reader to fit into a DS. So the e-reader can fit into a DS Lite, but not an original DS. This is again from Wikipedia. The e-reader can, however, be modified to fit into the original DS. In either case, there is no support for linking features as neither system has a link cable port. This is, I'm not buying this. Even out of like not nostalgia, but even if I was a collector, I'd be like, I'm okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right, Matt. Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan.
Good fun fact as always.
Well,
all right, we're gonna hop into the news for the week. This is kind of last week, but I think were we off last week?
Yes, sir.
Oh yeah, me and Tim were both playing D&D at separate D&D parties, which is kind of funny. But yeah, this is kind of news from last week, but we never covered it, and it was kind of big-ish news. Warner Bros. Cancels Wonder Woman game and closes 3 studios. This is my IGN. Warner Bros. Canceling its planned Wonder Woman game and shutting down 3 studios: Monolith Productions, Player First Games, and WB San Diego, according to Bloomberg reporter Jason Schreier. Schreier broke the news on Blue Sky, followed by the release of a full report on Bloomberg. Shortly after Schreier's post, WB confirmed the shutdowns to Kotaku in a statement. Quote, we've had to make some very difficult decisions to structure our development studios and investments around building the best games possible with our key franchises: Harry Potter, Mortal Kombat, DC, and Game of Thrones. After careful consideration, we are closing 3 of our development studios: Monolith Productions for Player First Games and Warner Bros. San Diego. This is a strategic change in direction and not a reflection of these teams or the talent that consists within them. The development of Monolith's Wonder Woman video game will not move forward. Our hope was to give players and fans the highest quality experience possible for the iconic character, and unfortunately, this is no longer possible within our strategic priorities. This is another tough decision as we recognize Monolith's storied history of developing epic fan experiences through amazing games. We greatly admire the passion of the teams and thank every employee for their contributions. As difficult as today is, we remain focused on and excited about getting back to producing high-quality games for our passionate fans and developed by our world-class studios and getting our games business back to profitability and growth in 2025 and beyond. End statement, quote. So, I mean, the sad thing it's all sad, but Monolith being shut down, I really enjoyed the Shadow of War games, Shadow of Mordor. And I find it odd that like they weren't able to bring a Wonder Woman game to fruition. It sounds like there were some development issues, but are you at all shocked by this news of them shutting down these studios, and in particular Monolith?
Well, yeah, I just actually I wanted to bring up a list of some things that Monolith was known for, and I know about the Middle-earth games. So Shadow of Mordor, Shadow of War, but they're also known for Fear as well, which was a huge game back in the day. I played Fear, I played Fear on console, I played Fear on the PC. It was like a really big title for me. And so it's really sad to see, Monolith go. I liked Monolith Middle-earth Shadow of Mordor. I didn't mind Shadow of War. I got bored of it though, unfortunately. But they're also known for No One Lives Forever, which is a pretty niche series, pretty old series. I used to play that too. And what I hate about this is it just, no matter how you slice it, it just seems like a stupid decision. And the reason why I say that is it's like, as far as I know, these games were were these games popular? Like Middle-earth Shadow of Mordor, Middle-earth Shadow of War were as far as I know, commercially successful. Like these games made a bunch of money. They were known for the Nemesis system. They had a big license attached to it, which of course is Lord of the Rings. It's like, these are big games. Fear was like a trendsetter at the time. AI in the Fear series was like bar none the best. The shooting was crazy. The online tried cool things with slow-mo online, when in PvP, multiple expansions, multiple sequels. I don't know if Monolith was involved with the sequels, but there's just, this sucks to me. And it's like they were working on Wonder Woman, and then they're just like, we're canceling it. And this can't help but remind me of what happened to Pandemic Studios back in the PS2 era, where, well, actually, I feel like maybe it was later. Maybe it was in the 360 era. But anyway, Pandemic Studios is the one responsible for Mercenaries, the Mercenary series. They're the ones responsible for the original Battlefronts, Battlefront 1 and 2, as well as other games as well. And they were given a Catwoman game or something like that. And then the Catwoman game kind of got out of hand or whatever. There's a whole thing that happened. I watched a little documentary on it a couple years ago. And then boom, kind of everything fell apart. And it's like, Pandemic still had value to give, as far as I could tell, right? We're not behind closed doors. I acknowledge that. But This just feels like such this feels like this is once again businesses just being like, I'm not going to put any work in, shut it down. It's like, you could put work into Monolith. Like, you could say, if Wonder Woman Behind Closed Doors is not working out, cancel it. And yeah, it's going to be a bit of a dark time, but like, there's talent there and all this. Whereas like these studios now just seem to be like, cancel it, get somebody else, build another studio later. It's like, why? You had it. You had it already.
WB's kind of been in a bad spot lately, and they have this new CEO who's like trying to, save the sinking ship. I believe he's like turned their whole movie TV production into profitability now, and so now maybe they're going after the games. But it's probably just one of those cases where just like things got too expensive. Like, it's been years since Monolith came out with their last game, which was Shadow of War. Like, do you remember when that came out? Like,
Shadow of
2017
War
maybe?
was a number of years, like not super old.
2017.
2017. Okay. Well, actually, that's kind of surprising. Like, in my head, that feels like that Shadow of Mordor time.
Well, that's 8 years ago, right?
Yeah.
So that's a lot of time to be working on a game and paying for all the technology and whatnot, and paying all those salaries. And so I think it's just it sucks, but it's one of those decisions where it's like they haven't made the game yet. We're still having troubles. There probably was no light at the end of the tunnel, right? And they had to cut their losses at a certain point. I'm just surprised though, because like they did have the experience of making both Middle Earth games, which were pretty good. And how that didn't just translate into making a Wonder Woman game is beyond me, Well,
I just want to look up here. Like, I want to look up Pandemic Studios games. And, like, Pandemic Studios, like, again, like, this feels very, very much like the same situation. Like, they're known for frickin', I didn't know this. They're known, according to Wikipedia here, for Destroy All Humans. They're known, of course, for Battlefront, like I mentioned, the Mercenary series. I know I haven't played this, but I know some people have talked about it. Full Spectrum Warrior. Like, this feels like such a like a kick in the teeth. They're known for the Lord of the Rings Conquest. Another dev who touched Lord of the Rings and then died.
God.
Like, this is like, Ryan. Like, do you think that this is just like a bad choice? Like, because here's the thing, it's like, I understand in business, you want to be cutthroat, you want to have no sentimentality. Some of our argument as fans of games are going to be from sentimentality, right? We're going to be like, man, I loved, Pandemic. I loved Monolith. I loved Enter in Studio here that was shut down. Why did you get rid of it? Sometimes I guess as a shrewd business person, you have to get rid of them. I guess.
Yeah,
however, this just feels
executives right now,
Yeah, but like, this doesn't feel like one of those times though. This doesn't feel like, all right, Monolith, you're done. Like, what? Like, even if Wonder Woman came out and was an absolute disaster, I still struggle with the idea that they were like, yeah, get rid of it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, just, again, that could be my sentimentality, like, kind of shining through, but it's still very, like, I don't really get why this place was closed. Like, one project, like you said, it has been a while, like, 7 years or whatever. But according to the Gemini, I don't even know what you want to call it, the Gemini AI overview, I guess, it says here that the studio's annual revenue in 2025 was still at 139.1 million. So it's like, if they had made a game a long friggin' time, I mean, they were still making money.
That much, really? Is that to be believed?
Again, this is, like I said, that's why I did the disclaimer. This is the AI overview.
I don't know if I believe that. That's a lot of money. That sounds like money you'd make when selling a game,
Yeah, honestly, though. I'm just reading this thing, but
I just feel, and this, I don't know why this keeps happening. Are executives not aware of what's happening? Are they not hearing about like people's skepticism of big budgets? Like, why are they still financing these games at such high, big ass budgets? Do they honestly think just that big budgets will mean big success? And it's weird when it's like in an industry where they're so afraid of taking chances, and yet they'll bet hundreds of millions of dollars on a game. You know what I mean?
What's kind of interesting is it makes them, I think it proves that they're tone deaf in this industry, but at the same time, it's like they're doing what executives do, kind of, where they're like, where they're just sort of like, oh, is this project big? Yeah, well, it has a big license attached to it. Everyone knows what Wonder Woman is. Everyone knows what DC is. We're going to make this big grand game. Our last games, our Lord of the Rings games, which were also well-known licenses, did well. let's do it. And so they're just like, okay, do it, make a bunch of money, have fun. And then when there's like a, any sort of issue or whatever, then it's sort of like, well, okay, shut it down. Like it's just like an emotionless, like do it or don't do it. They just don't care kind of thing. And I feel like in games, because they're like an art form almost, or maybe considered an art form, whatever the industry considers them, industry professionals consider them. It's like we do have like, again, that sentimentality toward them. And like almost that protectiveness, like you don't want to see your favorite games and your favorite studios close. And so to us, it's very tone deaf. But I just wonder like how many of these studios, studio closures are just sort of like somebody looking at numbers on a page and just going like, yep, do it. Okay, get rid of them. Just that quick.
I just wanted to see what their budget was, if that's even public. I don't know. It's very easy to find movie budgets. It's hard to find what the budgets of games are.
Well, the thing with this over this what you call it, this Wonder Woman game being like so many years in development. I mean, did we see anything of it? Have we seen the Wonder Woman game at all?
We saw that like little animated like teaser when they announced that they were working on it, and that was it.
Yeah, so we never really saw like the game itself, right?
No, not a trailer, not a what do you call it? Cutscene, not anything like that. No.
Maybe it got into like deep trouble.
I just don't know why they're afraid to try things. And I've heard the saying in movies, not necessarily video games, but I imagine it's true for video games too. But it's like actors don't really sell movies anymore. Back in the day, it's like you're a big Hollywood star, you're headlining some new movie. Oh my God, let's go see that movie. We like that guy or whatever, or that girl or whatever, right? But now apparently it's franchises. It's what sells tickets. Oh, let's go see the new Marvel movie. Let's go see James Bond. Let's go see Mission Impossible. Right. And so that almost feels like it's happening with video games too, where they all want things to either be a franchise already or like recently has become a franchise. And I remember Ubisoft saying we want all of our new games to become franchises. Right. They want everything to turn into Assassin's Creed. Like if they had it their way, they'd be making a Watch Dogs every year. But that franchise seems to have fizzled out. But I just find it weird that like they're willing to put so much money onto these games in these franchises, but not willing to like risk it on a new game or a smaller game or some fresh new idea. Why not take like a smaller budget and $50 million, which used to be like a video games budget, is now a small budget, and bet on some tiny little game? Why spend $100 million on a Wonder Woman game? That you just close up the studio after 8 years. Like that seems bizarre to me.
You said the bad word, Ryan. Small.
What?
Like no one wants to have a small game that has a small impact that makes a small profit. You want a blockbuster. You need to prove your. I would imagine the people that are in charge of these things want big money, big decisions type of thing. Because I mean, we're talking a lot about Monolith specifically. But I forget the name of the studio, but the studio that made Multiverses, I mean, Multiverses is a prime example of just poor decisions by WB. So their studio is also being closed. The game's being shuttered, although it's going to be available offline, if I remember correctly, reading a couple weeks ago. But like Multiverses was off to like a pretty good start. Like people were playing it, people were enjoying it. There was Game Pass, like a Battle Pass and stuff. This was a games as a service game that was a successful games as a service game. Now, I don't have specific numbers, but I know that the game was doing pretty good. Then all of a sudden they go, well, actually, lol, this was a beta. We're going to shut down the game and then we're going to come back later. And then they shut it down and then they came back later and they're like, oh, we're back now. And it's like, Who made that decision? Like you guys had momentum. You guys were in the zeitgeist. People, meaning journalists, were covering when new seasons and new characters were dropping. Like your content was selling as far as we know. And it's like, well, it's likely, I mean, this is an estimate, but it's likely because Multiverses was not a big blockbuster success. And so they want no part of that. They only want big wins. Mm-hmm. But you're right, Ryan, is like, here's the thing is like, if you try to boil it down, like I've thought of this, like every single time a game studio closes, I think of this type of stuff. And one of the things is like, if you boil it down, it's like, if you could somehow boil down human productivity into a number. So it's like this, like each human makes like one human is 1 unit of productivity, right? That's all they do. 1 unit of productivity for the sake of simplicity. and then a game, takes X amount of like productivity to make. What I think what's happening is these people want to make the absolute most out of each unit of productivity, out of each human that's there working. And if you're working on a small game and your one unit is making 1 million, to make it easy, so one unit makes 1 million, but if you were on Fortnite, your one unit might make 10 million, they go like, well, we're wasting 9 million per unit, per person. We're wasting $9 million. We need more. We need more money. But I think the big issue comes in is that we're throwing revenue away. Like by having revenue, specifically, not even necessarily revenue, but specifically having profitability, cash flow, all that, like you're insulating yourself from mishaps, mistakes, and failures. And I think these guys are just like, nope, go whole hog. And I have heard that in the entrepreneurial space in the past. Like anyone who's like read an entrepreneurial book or like listened to an audiobook or like podcast, like some people are like, no, like you arrive on the shores of your enemy and you burn the boats you came on because now success is the only success or death, that type of thing. And it's like, yeah, but we also we didn't burn our homeland as well. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? It's like we could still have a nice economy and a nice like homeland back at home, and then you can go whole hog and try to like, I want to take the gaming industry by storm. That's great, but you should have a decent foundation. And I agree with you. Having small games that make money makes sense to like it would add to your foundation. It would strengthen your foundation.
Yeah, I just want to use this as an example here. So John Wick is a big popular franchise, right? The first movie had a budget of $20 to $30 million, and it made $86 million. Now the $86 million is not huge, but relative to its budget, that's a pretty good return, right? And by the time you get to the fourth movie, they're now at the box office making $440 million, right? So like they started off with a tiny budget and then grew a franchise out of it. And why they don't do that anymore, it's just like every new game has to be $150 million, $200 million, and then it collapses and it's like, whoopsie, sorry about that. Like, didn't they say Suicide Squad cost them $400 million? It was like a $400 million loss or something like that.
I don't remember the number, but I know it wasn't
like
good.
Stupid. Yeah. So I'm not an executive. I'm not in there. I don't know the details. I'm not talking every day with numbers and crap. But from the outside, it just looks like they don't really know what they're doing.
Well, it's like if you use my boiled down example, and I think that's maybe how they're looking at it. And they're not seeing, hey, we made $1 million per person. They're seeing we lost 9 million per person. We want each person to make 10.
Yeah.
Right. But like there comes a point when the bank account dries up and you need to start shutting people down. I mean, look at Assassin's Creed. Like you're 100% right, Ryan. Assassin's Creed did not launch as this huge, critical, amazing success. It had a lot of great things going for it and a lot of friggin' stupid things going for it. And then they said, all right, well, like Ubisoft's like, okay, that's it. We'll fix it up. And then they made Assassin's Creed 2, one of my favorite games on that generation. Like I friggin' love Assassin's Creed 2. I played the shit out of Assassin's Creed 2. I did absolutely everything in Assassin's Creed 2. And it's like, that's how you build a franchise. Like you're 100% right. It's like you start at like a lower position and you earn the ability to go ahead. You see it in TV shows as well. A TV show has like a modest season of 8 episodes and has a low budget, so not the greatest like effects and stuff like that. And then all of a sudden it blows up because it's like a big game a big show that went viral. And then you notice in season 2 and season 3 that the seasons may become longer, or they're just burning the budget with a bunch of good CG. And you're like, oh, they got some money for this now, right? And it's like they built this damn series. They didn't start off with this huge budget.
And give your developers time to like learn from their mistakes. They're going to make mistakes the first time out making a new franchise. It's not always going to be perfect and be amazing. And it's like, let them iterate. We have seen multiple times how game series have kind of blown up after the second one, so, but sometimes they're just like, nope, cut it out. It's gone. See ya, on to the next thing. But
what sucks about it though, is like, and then like Ryan, like, I don't know if you want to chime in on this, but it's like, I had this issue in school too, where so my schooling was split into lecture and lab, and I'll talk about the lab parts. That's the hand-on part. And you would have like a thing called the lab test. Makes sense. You do a test and, you like show that you can build the circuit or like program this thing or whatever, because I was in computers. And there would be times where like something would mess up. Like I had one lab test where like I didn't do anything wrong. My op amp broke, and it was like this op amp is like known for failing. Like it's a high failure rate on the chip, and it failed. So I was like, oh shit, like something's wrong. So the teacher had offered that he's like, if you need help, I'll help you, but you'll lose 10% right off the hop. So I was like, okay, this is broken. Like I'm gonna get 0. So I'm gonna ask. And the guy wouldn't help, whatever. But then so I ended up figuring it out myself, and I ended up getting a decent grade. But like that experience stuck with me because I thought to myself, in the field, my boss is not going to be like, Matt, you're fired, and op amp went out. Like op amps fail. Like op amps fail. It's a known thing. We were taught that in class, in the lecture. That's how I knew that. And it's like, to me, I always thought that a lab test was for lack of a better way to say it, fucking stupid. Like I always thought, no, like I should be able to show you competency and you grade me in an analog way on the competency. It's one thing when it's on paper and it's pass or fail, but like let me go into the lab and fuck things up. Don't have me be afraid to blow up op amps and, mess up resistors and accidentally make mistakes. Because we were always threatened, like, oh, we only have a certain amount of equipment here, and if you mess it up, it's over, and we don't have any more, resistors to give you guys and all this. And it's like, so it makes everyone like super conservative and afraid. Everyone's kind of like stealing the answers off each other because they're trying to, and it's like, not to get like super off topic, but it's like, it's very much not like a great learning environment. So I can only imagine the stakes when you're a game developer and you're put into, quote unquote, the office / computer lab, if we were to like make a contrast to what I was just said. And you're just like, make Suicide Squad, make it games as a service and make it perfect. And then you leave. And they go like, what? I've never done that before. I make single player games. I certainly didn't ask about that. Certainly didn't ask about that. I told you to make this game perfect. Like, it's just fucking stupid.
Yeah. Well, I feel like they don't learn until like it crashes, and then we all build back up from scratch. You know what I mean?
And that I also think that's stupid too, right? Like,
yeah.
If you walk into your house, Ryan, you stub your toe, you don't burn your house to the ground and build a new house.
Yeah,
it's ridiculous.
I saw someone else make that comparison one time. What the heck was I watching? Did I send you that thing?
I'm not sure. What is it?
I think I sent you some guy who made that kind of comparison. Anyway, but yeah, it was something like that. Yeah. All right. Moving on. Naughty Dog boss says, "Don't bet on there being a Last of Us Part 3." This is from Eurogamer. In a new interview with Variety, Neil Druckmann has cast doubt on a possible The Last of Us Part 3. When asked about a potential third game, he replied, quote, "I guess the only thing I would say is don't bet on there being more of The Last of Us. This could be it." End quote. Now, he has in the past kind of talked about how he has like a story in his head, and he said the kind of thing like, oh, we'll only do it if we have a compelling story and if the team is really passionate about it and stuff. So he's kind of played with the idea of there being a part 3. But now it's odd for him to just kind of be out and be like, no, there is no Last of Us Part 3. Don't bet on it, really. Unless he's trying to throw us off, Who really knows at this point? The Last of Us TV show does have apparently like 3 more seasons coming. So that will keep Last of Us like content still coming. But
does he mean like their new space game, if it fails, they're just going to get shuttered, and then that way they're not going to make a Last of Us 3?
Although that kind of sucks too when it's like BioWare falling back on their tried and true franchises, right? So they had like one big screw up with
Anthem.
The hell was that game? Anthem.
And we're not given the opportunity to fix it, even though they had a plan in place.
Right, and we've seen that happen, but that does take a lot of investment, and there has to be a skeletal structure there, right? Something like Cyberpunk, where it was a good game, but there was a lot of problems with it that they just had to fix. But then it had some resurgence, and everyone loves it now. I don't know whether Anthem had the bones, or not. But anyway, it's one of those things where it's like, they make this big game, it screws up, everyone's like, kind of like, oh, that sucks for BioWare. And then they fall back on, we're doing Dragon Age and Mass Effect again. Well, it's like, oh, well, maybe, what if you tried something else? That'd be fun, wouldn't it? But maybe they're scared now. But look at Dragon Age. That apparently did not sell all that well. It's already on PlayStation Plus, which is not a good sign. So just falling back on your old franchises doesn't really help you either.
I mean, with BioWare, it feels like they've been given adequate chances, though. Like, I don't feel super sorry for BioWare because, like, Anthem was a critical mess, and then obviously like a player hand game. I feel bad that they weren't allowed to make Anthem 2.0 because they announced it. Like, they showed off Anthem 2.0 and they're like, these are the fixes, and that could have really helped. So that is a shame. I do agree, or like I do think that, but like. Then they were given another huge game. You know, the next Dragon Age comes out. It doesn't do well. I haven't played it, so I can't directly comment on it. But I've heard it's not great. I've heard the writing is bad. I haven't experienced it myself. But it's sort of like, okay, man, like if the writing's bad and like if your last game didn't do well and now this one's not going to do well, I like the idea of keeping studios around to have the developers learn and things like that. I totally get that. But like we have with BioWare. Like EA has, I would say, has been quite tolerant with BioWare because BioWare does have a history there and all the rest of it. But like, you know, after Anthem and Dragon Age, I wouldn't have been surprised if EA said, okay, BioWare, you're out. Done.
Well, BioWare has a lot of history, right? They have a lot of great franchises under their belt, a lot of great games under their belt. And they're kind of like a famous like developer. So I wonder if the calculus is a little different in shuttering that kind of brand. Right, Monolith, I don't think really people really cared about as a brand of a studio, you know. But I think for sure BioWare, and so maybe that's why they're willing to keep it around a bit longer than maybe they would normally.
Well, like someone like Monolith though didn't make any mistakes yet, none that were released.
No, that is weird. Yeah,
like you know what I mean. It's like
I don't the development issues apparently.
I was gonna say we don't know what was happening behind the scenes of Wonder Woman, all that stuff because it didn't come out and all that. But like, I mean. It hadn't come out. Like you could have just been like, okay, that's it. We're not doing Wonder Woman.
Yeah.
Everybody stop, take a breath, make another game. You know, like I don't know. You could have did that.
Fun fact: Anthem was the first game I played on my very first gaming PC that I built at your house, Matt.
Oh my god!
Because I got it free with either the graphics card or the processor. That and Metro 2043 or whatever that one's called.
Metro Exodus.
That's it. Those are the first two games I got on my gaming PC. So I played an hour and 42 minutes of Anthem.
Wait, that's what you just went and looked and like that's what you played here, like when you were at my house and we were like testing it.
I think I did play a bit at home, but yeah that's about it.
That's pretty crazy to just be like, man, this 1 hour and 43 minutes was like way back on the day I built this computer.
Yeah. Going back to The Last of Us, though, I do kind of like I'm a big Last of Us fan. I would be more than happy if he said this was it, which he kind of did say. Don't ruin it. I love it. I love both games the way they are. The story is kind of pretty much wrapped up. You know, don't come up with some game that's going to be bad. I don't want that. They shuttered the multiplayer game. That's fine. So maybe come back in 10 years. I don't know. Just whatever.
Do you think that Naughty Dog, I was going to say, you think that Naughty Dog's untouchable, but I feel like BioWare felt like they were untouchable.
Yeah. Well, this new game is already off to a controversial start because people always. It's hard to know what the masses of gamers actually feel. Because one, it's like you put a woman in the game and they all get angry. Two, you put an unattractive woman in the game and people are like, "Why isn't she attractive?" You know, and it's like, well, what do you want? You know.
Oh, they were freaking out about her being bald too, right, or something.
Yeah,
like
it's like, why do you have to want to bang the main character? You know.
I need to see gameplay before I judge this thing. Like,
I didn't want to bang Cole McGrath, and I played those games.
Who the fuck is Cole McGrath?
Is that his name? Did I get that wrong?
I mean, that sounds familiar, but I don't know who Cole McGrath is.
Infamous?
Oh my god, it is. How the hell did you remember Cole McGrath?
What do you mean? It was another bald dude. I was just trying to think of on top of my head.
How the hell?
But yeah, so that game could that game could fall victim of the, you know, quote unquote like anti-woke crowd, you know, just because they don't like it being a female lead, and then B, they don't think she's attractive, and so they're like already protesting the game.
Well, you and I were actually, and then like we're not gonna get into that, but like you and I were talking about potentially doing a query corner on this, where we wanted to like do an analysis, and we would need to do an analysis of like, you know, we hear a lot of this like the people screaming of over whatever, this chick being bald or a number of things in other games as well, like, oh, you know, Avowed is bad because it's woke, and I was like, I don't even know what's woke in it or whatever. Mm-hmm. And like you and I were wanted to like, although it would require like a true investigation, I think, like talk
Or
about that,
just getting some numbers and some stats together. Yeah.
because it's like, is like the negative player opinion, I guess, really throwing things off? It's like Star Wars Outlaws is an example of that potentially, right? Because like I've heard, or like I've seen on Reddit and things like that, people are like, oh, screw that game, whatever, blah blah blah, and like everyone just kind of like skips it, and then someone goes on Reddit and posts, hey, you know what? Like I kind of listened to that in the beginning, and then I played it, and it's all right. It's like,
Right.
So it's like clearly that person was affected by that negative thing.
There, as far as I can tell, there's several weird things happening in the gaming sphere. One is like a disconnect between a lot of critical reviews and user reviews, and that this is outside of the whole woke crap, which I don't really care about. It's just like something like, well, Cyberpunk was the big one, and that had to do more with the performance issues. Reviewers only got like the PC version, which apparently ran well and stuff like that. But there's been a couple of games where like there's been a massive divide between critical reviews and user reviews, either one way or the other. Either the critics love it, the people hate it, or the people love it and the critics hate it. Did I say the same thing twice? You know what I mean?
Well, no, yeah, like you're iterating it, but like, yeah, like you're saying that like there's a divide, whereas like in an ideal world, like they would be together. Like it would be like the critics would rate it a 7, and like the players would rate like a 7 or 8, maybe a 6.
It would make sense because like the reviewers aren't like above the normal population. They're just people.
Yeah,
they're just people plucked out of society who wanted to be journalists and review games. And so you would think that they would at least somewhat match the current generation of people, especially Metacritic, which like conglomerates all the reviews into one score. You would think that would be equal to the users' reviews, but it doesn't always seem to be the case. Another weird thing that's happening right now is there's been a lot of games that have been like hyped up that when they come out they're just meh. And is that like a marketing thing where they're hyping us all up? They're doing their job of making us want a game. Like Avowed, everyone was talking about Avowed since the day it was announced. People seemed really excited for Avowed. It comes out and everyone's like, meh. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that one feels almost like as if that Xbox tax exists. Like I always hear that it's like, oh, it's the Xbox tax, right? Where a game comes out and it's like, oh, it's if we somehow had an objective way to rate it as a 7, let's say, Sony would in the real world get like a 9, and Xbox will get a 6, right? There's like that tax kind of thing. I don't know. I've seen some issues with Avowed for sure. Like you and I have discussed it because you've been playing it here and there. But I have heard other people play it and they say like it's fine, like it's just like a fun game.
Well, that goes back to your point about how there just seems to be people who like just are wanting to hate everything nowadays. And it's like, yeah, I've played a few hours of Avowed. It seems like a fine game to me. But they were all like, no, we don't like it. And it's like, okay, all right, Jesus.
There's definitely people online that are like anger mongers, and they're always like angry, and their like personality revolves around being angry at everything, hating everything, but always liking. Usually it's like some classic thing. It's like, oh, but the original Marios are amazing, and they're like the best thing humanity's ever made. And then like but it's like, but everything else is shit. Everything else is bad. Screw everything else. And it doesn't have to be necessarily about the woke stuff. It could be about frame rate. It could be about anything, right? So it's like they're angry about something or a collection of things, and they're just going to be angry about that forever. But there's this other side. I do find myself skipping the videos of some influencers when they show up on my TikTok and Reels and things like that. And it's when they make like long form, sometimes even intelligent arguments, but all they do is argue.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's like, oh, X person is playing Watch Dogs. He's gonna hate it. Then like, a couple months later, he shows back up on my TikTok. Oh, X person's playing Avowed. He's gonna hate it, and I just skip. I don't even listen, right? And it's like,
they're gonna hate it before you.
I know I'm gonna hate it. Like I've never heard some of these people, and like they're not being an anger monger. They're not saying screw Ubisoft and stuff. Like they'll even say like don't go after Ubisoft, don't be screaming at them and stuff. Like they'll have like a reasonable way. They'll have like a reasonable or more intelligent like sort of argument, right? Where they'll actually come out and be like, this performance is bad. And they will critique it, but it's almost like it's too strict of a critique or something. Mm-hmm. And I understand it's subjective. It's like, subjective. So some people like that, and that's fine. But that's another side of this, I think, in the gaming sphere. And like, I feel like, especially when your game gets big, people always like will go like, if Last of Us Part 3 comes out, everyone's going to be like, oh, Last of Us Part 2 is better. Meanwhile, when Last of Us Part 2 came out, it's like, oh, Last of Us Part 1 was better, right? And then you get the people that are
divide. That was a big old divide. That was so good.
Well, like some of the people are like angry, like divisiveness. Some of the people are doing the more intelligent, like I don't like Last of Us 2 for legitimate reasons because of this, this, and this. And it's like, okay, I get it. But I think what's weird about the gaming industry now is that we have these people that are always angry. Whether they're like, or not necessarily angry, they're always negative. Whether they're intelligently negative or they're just screaming at the top of their lungs negative. It's like, you can't just hate everything. Or like you can, but then like you're not really giving an opinion. Like you could just like go on X and be like, I don't know, what's a game came out? Monster Hunter Wilds. I hate it. That's your review. Like,
man, I remember, I guess I can kind of understand the Last of Us hate. I think it went too far. You know, people sent a lot of mean, like, you know, tweets and whatever to Laura Bailey, which, you know, that's never something you should do. But I get why like someone rational would not like what happened in The Last of Us Part 2. You know, especially when the game was marketed in a certain way, but it was to make the thing that happens more shocking and surprising. You know, you don't want to market your big surprise for the, you know, that would be weird. It ruins the surprise. But after it happened, I remember I texted Marty. I'm like, this is awesome. Because like, I don't want just the same game again. I don't want The Last of Us Part 1 again. And it wasn't. They gave me a new story and a new experience and new characters and stuff. And I remember watching like some behind the scenes thing of them making The Last of Us Part 2 or in some interview with Neil Druckmann. And he said that like they would never say like, oh, what did we do in the first game? Let's do that in the second game, because that's like the worst thing you could do. And I don't know if you care, like, do you watch a lot of comedies at all or anything?
I don't, not particularly like stand up kind of thing, or like
no, like comedic movies, like funny like movies.
Oh, like here and there, maybe.
Like, so a sequel to a comedy is usually bad, and the biggest problem is they do the same joke over and over,
but
that
bigger
they did
sometimes.
In the first movie, but try to make it even more goofy, and it's just like we've already seen this. This isn't funny, right? But that's the same thing. Same thing with telling a dramatic story. You don't want to hear the same story again. People might think they want that, you know, but you don't really want that. You want something new and fresh and exciting. So
what's a little bit what kind of sucks about it is like it's hard, like even when like if someone comes out and says we're going to do another Elder Scrolls, like each of the Elder Scrolls have their own unique flavor, their own unique regions and things like that. But it's even hard as a player to be like, well, you know, I hope Elder Scrolls 6 is completely new. And I feel like a lot of people would disagree with that. I feel like if you went into like a comment section after saying that, people would be like, no, I want this to be the same. Like, I want this to be more of the same with like updated graphics and like maybe a couple new mechanics or something. Maybe I'm wrong in saying that, but I do know that there are reviews out there, especially on Metacritic and things, user reviews, where sometimes like a critic review might be like, this sequel, you know, didn't take it far enough. It's very much the first game again. And then you'll see a user review with, say, like a 9 out of 10 when the critic was at like a 6 or a 7. And they'll go, you know what? No, 9.5 out of 10. Like, I really like this game because I wanted more of the same. Like, I beat that first game 4 times and I want to beat this next game 4 times. So, like, it's hard to do. But you are right. Well, it's like when a new experience is executed correctly, it feels better than just more of the same.
Well, in the Last of Us, I'm more talking story wise. Gameplay, obviously, yes, you want the same gameplay because that's what you liked in the first place, right? So if there was a game you liked the gameplay of, you obviously want that again, but you do want it to be better if they can make it better, you know. So more mechanical things you probably want somewhat the same, and then a new layer of fresh new things to do on top of that. But in terms of story, you don't really want to do the same thing over again, you know.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's like, I mean, once your series gets big enough, you could do like a spinoff like Gears and Gears Tactics. But when they announced Gears of War E-Day, it's like, that's a third-person shooter. Mm. It's not going to be a strategy game.
It's fine to have the same weapons and same magic and spells in Skyrim as you did in Oblivion. Same kind of swinging your sword around and walking through the mountains and fighting trolls and whatever. You know, that's all fine. But you wouldn't want to be closing Oblivion rifts again. You know what I mean?
No, that's true. That's very true.
Yeah. Yeah, that wouldn't want to be your main objective. Like, that'd be ridiculous.
You know what's interesting too is like when you said that specifically about Naughty Dog, like, you know, to kind of like bring it back to the story on like they're not sure if there's going to be a Last of Us Part 3. This could be the reason. like they could sit down and be like, what do we want to do for Last of Us Part 3? And they may be quote unquote using 2 and 1 as a crutch. And since they don't like to do that, they might just be like, I think we're done here. Like maybe that's what's happening.
And it's nice that Sony is like allowing them to choose what they want to do. Because I'm sure Sony would love a Last of Us Part 3.
Oh, of course.
Because that means more TV show, more game sales for them, So I'm just hoping that the new game is pretty fun. Hard to tell off that first trailer. I'm kind of mixed on it personally. I think it looks like it has potential, but I wasn't like blown away by the trailer. You know what I mean?
It's got to be said with space games now, especially since Starfield. I got to see what the hell they're doing. Like if it's if it's slow or whatever, like I'm out. Like I don't know. Well, what's weird though is I think we've mentioned this in the past, even in a Query Corner, just to touch on it briefly because I know we've been stuck in the story for a while. But it's like you mentioned earlier in the show that franchises sell games and sell movies, right? And like so, it's like let's go watch Mission Impossible. That's the Mission Impossible series. It's sort of like that. That's where I am with games now too. And so like I'm having trouble getting excited for this new, like Naughty Dog title because I have no context, of course, and we are waiting for gameplay. But it's like if they came out and just told us that Stalker 3 was in development, I'd be excited for it.
Mm-hmm.
Like I still wouldn't be all hyped up. I'd still want to see gameplay, see what they're doing. Of course, I'm gonna hold my full opinion, but I am still gonna be like, that's on my radar. That's on my radar, like for sure, the Stalker 3. But then if it's just like, yeah, but we have a space game in the back, I'll be like, well,
yeah,
maybe later,
Mm-hmm. All right, let's move on to our last story for the week. This is kind of just a quick one, just kind of update and talk about how impressive this is. Monster Hunter Wilds surpasses 8 million units sold in 3 days and is the fastest Capcom game to do so. This is from IGN here. This was reported by Capcom themselves. Extremely strong start. That is well above the 5 million copies that 2018's Monster Hunter World shipped in 2018, and the 4 million copies that Monster Hunter Rise shipped in 2021. These numbers shouldn't come as much of a surprise as Monster Hunter Wilds rocketed above 1 million Steam concurrents over its opening weekend and overtook Cyberpunk 2077 to become the 7th most played game ever. Wilds also helped Steam cross 40 million concurrent players for the first time. Speaking of the Monster Hunter series, Capcom revealed the franchise that began in 2004 on PlayStation 2 has exceeded 108 million units. Now, that is an impressive amount of units for a series sales. But what's hilarious is like GTA 5, a single game in a series, is like 200 million like units or whatever crazy number it's at. But anyway, good on Monster Hunter. That's great. We're actually playing it currently. But what do you make of this big old number, Matt?
Hate to reiterate what we said earlier in the show, but this is an example of a series that started with humble roots and is now at a really, really big peak. We assume a peak. What's the next game going to bring? Is it going to go up, down, stay plateau? Who knows?
Hard to tell, eh?
But this is an example of that where it like they tried different things and went on the Wii, they're on the 3DS, they're here, there, they're everywhere. And now look where they're at. They try to make it more accessible with Worlds. They made it even more accessible, I would say, or more quality of life with not with Wild, with Rise. And then now we got this. Now we have Wilds, and like not only is it popular, but it's also mainstream. Like it's getting big ad spots and things like that. Like good on them. This is how you build a franchise. Like
it kind of feels like FromSoft games where it's like you had that one friend who played them and loved them, but no one else played them.
Yeah. Yep.
And then it's like Bloodborne comes along and everyone's like, And then Elden Ring comes along and it's this massive success, And like Monster Hunter was kind of like that. At least for me.
I had the first one.
Did you really?
On the PS2, yeah. There was like weirdly, there was a guy. So there was a guy in our class back in elementary school that had like a Monster Hunter shirt, and I was like, "What is that?" And he's like, "Oh, it's a game." And I was like, "Oh, it's kind of cool." And then I used to get the odd PlayStation magazine, and it was in one of the PlayStation magazines. So I was like, "Oh shit!" Like maybe I'll pick that up. So I did one day, and I didn't really get it. Like I just sucked at it. Didn't know what the hell I was doing. I didn't play like too many different types of games back then. So whenever a game kind of like went off what I was familiar with, like a Call of Duty or like a shooter or like maybe even an RTS, I just like really didn't know what was going on. And so I just didn't understand it. So I sold it to a friend. He loved it. And so he showed me how to play it kind of like it was my copy, I guess, that I sold him. And I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. And then him and I started playing 3, like on the Wii, like Try or whatever it was. We started playing that together. And I was like, oh, so like this isn't bad. And I even got the keyboard going on the Wii so we could like text chat on there, and like got like Wi-Fi because I didn't have Wi-Fi in the house. I got Wi-Fi going for my Wii, and like played it on there, and was like, oh, that's pretty cool. And then time goes on, whatever. And like now I play I've played the game with Tim like quite a bit. Like I've played with I played Worlds with him. I played one of the 3DS titles briefly with him. Although we were trying to figure out which one. So one of the mobile titles anyway. And I played a little bit of the PSP version, and also Rise. Tim and I beat. I don't know. I want to say half of it,
Pass, right?
Something like that. What's that?
Wasn't that one on Game Pass?
Yeah, Rise. Yeah, that's what I'm talking. Yeah, so like Tim and I beat maybe half of that. We just kind of like picked it up.
Like that was a more mobile one, right?
Made by the mobile team. There's like
it didn't look as good as like other games, right? Or am I crazy?
I'm not picky enough to have remembered that. Like I would never have affiliated that with. But I will say this: a lot of quality of life improvements. Like even above Wilds, I'd say a lot of quality of life improvements. And now Wilds is here, right? And we're playing that with Tim like right now on stream and off stream as well. So like now it's like a mainstay in my gaming library, and like that's how a game series becomes something big. It's exactly what you said. You have one friend that knows how to play it and loves it, and then you slowly get introduced to it, and boom, one day it's there.
Yeah. I almost wonder if like sometimes people are every person wants the get rich quick scheme, or they want their first franchise to make them all the money possible. It's hard to think like 10 years into the future investing in a franchise that starts small and grows. It's hard to think like that. That's not how we're wired. We're basic apes. We just want give us a banana and we'll eat it. You know what I mean? So maybe it's just not the way humans are wired up, and hard to break out of that.
Well, like it would be nice to not have to work for stuff. Like, yeah. Yeah. It would be nice one day to think up of like a new video game and then just like turn on my Xbox and it be somehow made and installed. Yeah. It would be great, but
it's a little weird. It's a little almost morbid to think like you better work or you're gonna be out on the street. You're gonna be homeless. You know what I mean? Like just think of it from like a species like thing where we're all like, you must work, you must produce for society, or else you're out of here. You know what I mean?
Although, like back before societies and we were just in little groups, I would assume if you were useless, you'd get some sort of punishment, possibly tossed out.
Yeah,
you might starve. Maybe they wouldn't feed you. I don't know, something.
But the jobs at the time were just to keep the society going, as just to eat. You'd have to farm and hunt or whatever.
Sure.
Right? It wasn't like, build me this app or else you die. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I guess. Yeah.
But anyway, that's it for the week, Matt. For the news, at least. Shall we move on to what we're playing?
Sure.
What are you playing, Matt?
Why don't you know what, Ryan? Why don't you go first? This is a rare occurrence. Boy. You go first. Why not?
Oh, boy. I got some news.
I feel like I've been talking and talking and talking.
I got some news, Matt Lawrence.
You're pregnant.
God, what? No, I finished Indiana Jones and the Great Circle. Thank you.
Oh, man.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
That's pretty good, Ryan.
Yeah. Did I already ask you this? Or maybe I was talking to someone else. Oh, no, maybe I didn't ask you this. Have you ever played a game and like halfway through playing this game, you finally figure out how a core function of the game works? And you're like, damn, I wasted most of my time playing this game.
Absolutely, yeah. I've played games where like they've had a scanning functionality. I've like forgotten about it, and then I would just search for items manually, and then to be like, oh yeah, there's a scanning mechanic. I'm like, oh fuck, the amount of hours just spent looking on tables. Like,
so I had this happen where I knew what I was supposed to do. I knew how to level up, but I didn't really know how to find the thing to level up. So in Indiana Jones, you level up your character not through getting XP or whatever, but by finding books out in the world, and then you learn the book by paying for it with a currency that you get through exploration. So if I do a quest, I'll get like 200 points or whatever. If I take a picture of like a monument that they want me to take a picture of, I'll get like 25 points, right? So you get all these points for doing this stuff around the world as you're playing. Then when you find a book to learn it, it might cost 600 points, right? And it will be like, oh, you have an extra bar of health. That's good. That's a level up, right? I did not really understand the correlation between those two things, the points and the books, and how to get the points and stuff. and I didn't understand how to find the books. I thought they were just like I'd had to go searching for them. But there are ways to either you can buy like maps that'll tell you where the books are, and then when you hold open your map, you'll actually see the icon on your screen that leads you to that book. So it's not like the books are hidden. There's a way to actually find them exactly where they are. And I did not understand that until halfway through the game. And so basically what I did was like I was getting my ass kicked, or at least it was the game was becoming very difficult because I was not leveled up enough. And so I had to actually go back to the starting areas and hunt down all the books and all the different collectibles and stuff.
May I ask how that, like, did you miss a tutorial? Did you take a break from the game and forgot?
No, because it's not really laid out like, oh, here's your quest log, you know.
Right.
This is your main quest. Like it kind of is, but not in a traditional gameplay way. It's like you basically just open up your book or whatever, like Indy's like, you know, book that he writes down all his like stuff in. You open that up and you have a giant list of things on the left. And it was just kind of overwhelming and I didn't really like look at it too closely, but I probably should have. Because that's when I realized like, oh, it's like, oh, here's the thing I can select and make active as my quest. And that will show me where a book is. You know what I mean?
Okay.
So it was all very kind of complicated, but I ended up going back and finding like almost everything in like the first starting city, which is the Vatican. And then I was overpowered by the end. So that was fine.
So like would you say that you were struggling? Like I know obviously like you became overpowered so it was easier, but were you struggling without this knowledge? Like were you actually like dying a bunch and not finishing missions or taking forever and things like that?
Yes. And I misunderstood the core functionality of disguises.
Oh God. And it sounds like it's going to be important.
Yeah, because there are certain areas where you have a bunch of enemies who will attack you on sight if you're Indiana Jones.
Okay.
So if there's a book in an area that I need that book, I can't just go in there as Indy. I had to stealth around, and I was like, I'm so sick of stealthing. This was a couple weeks ago when I told you the reason why I wasn't like so hot to play Indiana Jones or Star Wars Outlaws was because of the mandatory stealth stuff, right? And I was like, that's what's like pushing me off of going back and wanting to sit down and play them. You don't have to stealth if you find the disguise. Because once you put on the disguise, you can walk around freely unless you see like an officer or something who like knows his men and you're not one of them, right? And so he's like, hey, who are you? But you can just run away from him. You know what I mean? So it made it walking through those areas so much easier. So at the end of the day, it's a great game.
Well, I was actually going to say, are you like, would you have adjusted your score? Like if you had not found out about these core things, like it sounds like the game was more of a slog. Well, it was like the way you described it, more of a slog. Like with this, like what? Okay, what is your two scores then? Like your real one and the one where you were kind of like in the dark, in the mechanical dark.
So it's probably about like an 8. I'd give it an 8, I think.
And that's your true score.
Yeah.
What about the mechanical dark?
The mechanical dark was probably around 6.5 maybe.
I mean, considerable. Like 6.5 is something that I usually wouldn't play too much.
Right, and that's what I was kind of like. I was playing it like I can see why people are saying this is a great game. It has all the hallmarks of a great game: great visuals, great acting, it's a good story, good action. You know, but I was just struggling with it, and I was very confused on how the mission structures worked, how to select side quests. It just didn't click for me until it was like halfway through the game.
This distinctly reminds me of when we played Outriders, and like Alex and I were constantly going after different builds and stuff, and then we finally get to the end game, and you were kind of saying like, I don't really want to mess with builds, or I don't know how to mess with builds. And then when we got to the end game, the actual end of the missions shows your damage and stuff. And Alex and I are at like 110 million. He's at like I'm at like 110 million. He's at like 100 million, and then you're at like 110,000.
Yeah.
It's like, Ryan, what happened? Like, what's going on?
I've said this before. I am not a technical gamer.
Right.
I'm not number crunching. I'm not like looking at like this armor gives you this, and if you combine it with this piece of armor, it like gives you double the damage protection. Like I don't do that. I see a green arrow that says up, and I equip that armor. That's how I play games. Right.
Right. And so this whole like book system and all that is definitely more convoluted than that. Like,
yeah.
Well, you've always wanted to make the Ryan RPG, right?
Yeah, a super bare bones minimalist RPG. Don't give me 1,000 different weapons with 1,000 like that you pull up like a spreadsheet when you open the freaking thing.
Is that your SEO
freaking
title? The minimalist
yeah,
RPG?
yeah. Freaking Elden Ring. Every weapon has a whole spreadsheet on the side. I'm like, oh, it's ridiculous.
Division 1 was very bad for that. It felt like
Yeah.
I was just reading orange text for days.
I want it so like you pick up a sword and it says damage 25 and that's it. And you pick up another sword, it says damage 26. You're like, all right, I'm using this one.
I'm using that sword, yeah.
What else does a sword do? It either damages or doesn't.
But is it a silver sword? Because I have a silver buff, but the silver buff isn't reflected in the damage. Like already, like with that one buff, we already had it.
If I were to do that, let's take like the Witcher like scenario, right, where you need to use a silver sword against monsters. The silver sword should be so recognizable as a silver sword that I don't have to read that it's a silver sword, right? You know what I'm saying?
Like, so you don't want the text label of a silver sword?
No, it can still say that, but I don't want that to be the thing you rely on.
Oh, I see.
I want you to open a chest, and as soon as you see the sword, you know it's a silver sword.
Sure.
Right? That's what I want. And The Witcher kind of does that because like the silver sword has like that hilt that is like the crossguard that's like pointed, and then the normal swords are like, you know, the normal crossguard. But I would still do something visually to make them more distinct in the Ryan RPG.
That is something that is lacking in some games, like Oblivion. Like it'll be like multiple items of the same skin, and you have to rely on like the stats and the name of it to figure out what it is.
On top of that, we played Monster Hunter Wilds, which has been actually quite enjoyable. I've been having a fun time with it. It's definitely a multiplayer game for me. I won't really pick it up and play it on my own.
Well, let me ask you about that because like we've been playing that together. I got a question for that. So, how I like the game in all aspects. I really don't like one thing in it though, and that's the forced on rails parts.
Yeah,
I don't like it where it's like, come on, we have to go to the village, and then I'm on rails, and this person's like, take a look at the sunset, take a look at the fish, look, there's bugs. It's like, holy fuck, let's go to the village. Like, come on.
Well, we were having a conversation about how someone brought up in a review of Avowed that you couldn't like kill the NPCs in a town and there was no police system. We had a lengthy conversation about that. And I think you had mentioned that like it seems like a reduction in quality if you can't have that kind of freedom in an RPG, right? I get that same feeling when there's on rails segments in a game, or when and Monster Hunter Wilds does this too. You go talk to an NPC in a town and it's text only. It's not voiced.
Oh, I see. Yeah. Okay.
Those two things really make me think it's a lower production, lower value kind of game. Even though it's not, it's just those rub me the wrong way, right?
Yeah, because like I mean, the text only sections are really common. I think in Japanese games, they're common in other games too.
I think
though.
so.
Like,
they do it even on their console games. Like most Western games don't do that in console games, but they'll do it on mobile games or whatever. But yeah, it does seem like a Japanese thing to have like a text based kind of thing.
Because usually, like as you've mentioned that in the past, and like usually you mention it, you say like Yakuza, for example, is like a hugely popular big budget title.
Types of cutscenes.
And there's 3 or 4 different types of cutscenes. Some of them are voiced, some are not. And it's like I remember you mentioning like this kind of drives me nuts. The text chat thing doesn't really bug me. The on rails thing for certainly does. Like the on rails, like I said, it bothers me in the pace, like I've already mentioned. But like you're right, like it's a little bit of a quality thing, like just a bit. And it sucks too because like the actual world is cool, the fighting is cool, all that stuff is cool, the gameplay is good. I like that it's co-op. I like the game a lot. It's just like I get stuck in these like, like we can lay it out. So it's weird. It's like we're both at the precipice of mission 1, and it says like talk to this person to begin mission 1. So we're like, okay. So we go to look at mission 1, and it's like we hop into mission. We both talk to Alma. She's like, all right, let's go to the village. That's mission 1. We both ride toward the village. We get ambushed by a lizard. I don't know. The lizard comes out. It has like a cutscene. And now there's a fight with the lizard. Now, both you and I are in the same lobby, but we are not playing co-op. In the same lobby, we're in the same party, and they call it something else. Link party, that's right. They call it a link party. So we're in the same link party, but we are not playing co-op. We are then both thrown into a mission, and both of our games sends out an SOS flare or whatever saying, you can come help me to everyone in the link party. So like Tim, he's off doing whatever he's doing because he's higher rank, but you and I are both doing this lizard thing. And then one of us must leave our game. They must end the mission, return to town. One of us stays in the mission. That person that left then joins that other person. We kill the lizard, and it does count the progress. It counts the lizard as killed on both my game, even though I've left and joined you, and it counts the lizard as killed on your game because it's your game. But once the mission's over, typically there's a cutscene which will kick you out, and then it's like then I have to continue with the thing, and it's like stuff like that is really freaking weird.
Yeah,
and Rise definitely spoiled us with like better quality of life than that. I forgot about this, but Tim was saying it's like kind of similar to World, which I did not remember at all.
I vaguely remember that. Yeah,
like apparently you couldn't be in the same game with someone when there was a cutscene playing. I don't remember if there was link parties and things like that. I don't remember, but it's just like that's a little bit weird, and so like that would be my main complaint about the game. But like these are nitpicks because they're quality of life things I'm complaining about. But it's still very much like damn, like just that like right there, like right at the precipice. It's like no link parties. Like when someone brings it up in the boardroom, it's like no, we're not doing link parties. We're doing lobbies, like cooperative lobbies, please.
Yeah, must be again some decision that they wanted. It's something they want to do. It's kind of like From Software games in that sense that you only join someone to then complete the next boss, right?
That's true. Yeah, like it is kind of like From Software that way.
Maybe it's a Japanese thing. Maybe it's that kind of style of game thing. I don't know.
You said that you wouldn't play this game by yourself. Would you play this game by yourself, but like the story to like get to the end game? No. Never.
It's not my type of game. It's a very technical game, right?
Right. Actually, what you're saying is that we should have a damage breakdown to see how much damage each of us are doing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, From Software games are the same thing. I've not played Sekiro because you could only play a single player. The only reason I've gotten through Bloodborne and Dark Souls 3 and Elden Ring is because I played a co-op. I have someone like Aaron holding my hand, telling me what to do, equip this or equip that or whatever. Take this potion, use this when you're poisoned. So I need my handheld.
I mean, admittedly, with Dark Souls, my experience specifically with Bloodborne, I had no idea where the hell to go. Because it would be like, you need to go to the old town. I'm like, well, the old town was 7 hours ago, so where the hell is that?
Yeah. Yeah. All right, Matt, well, what are you playing other than Monster Hunter?
So doing Monster Hunter Wilds, I think we've all covered that. But I'm still in the zone, and not on YTV, specifically the Exclusion Zone.
Damn it, a very Canadian reference.
I'm in the Exclusion Zone, specifically in Stalker 2. I have reached another pretty large milestone, I think, since we last spoke. Hopefully I'm not reiterating myself because it's been a little bit. But I am... So I think last time I talked about what I did, I had a side mission in the Red Forest. So I'm kind of like geographically bumping up against and can enter and very close to the Red Forest, which is scary. I don't really want to go there. The story took me down south to a region I did not know existed. It's called the Burning Forest. Cool as fuck in there. It's also terrifying. It also sucks in there, but it's awesome. It's like a burned forest where like most of it is like a forest fire burned, but it's constantly burning. So whenever the fires go out, a strike of lightning comes down and reignites the fire. And so it's constantly like in this burning, smoky, like really shitty state. And it almost feels a little bit like the Glowing Sea a little bit, where it's just like this like really like kind of shitty area on the map. So I ripped around there, did a major story beat, and now my story is telling me to go up north into the Red Forest. So I have that to do, but I got distracted. So I was walking out of a place, and I was radioed, and they said, hey, we want more of these samples, and there's 3 of these samples that we want you to grab, and one of them was close to me. And the region I'm in, the roads are like carved out of like, not quite cliffs, but like when it's like dirt cliffs kind of thing, where it looks like water has like etched away. So I can't get on top. What's that?
Yeah.
So it's like, so it's like when you can't get on top, like, so I can't get on top of those things. So I was looking at it and I was like, if I don't get this one objective that's in the north of this region, of this one like particular province, I'm going to have to like really loop myself back. So I went up there. That led me to kind of like I found clearly like a locked up room, and there was a stash in there. Got a new gun, killed a poltergeist, left that area, went toward the objective. A mission happens, got to run and hide. I run and hide, and there's a bunch of people that in this safe room. And I'm like, that's kind of weird. Go back to my objective. On the way back to the objective, I find an artifact, go to the artifact. This game is just jam-packed. Eventually get to the objective. I get a radio that the objective is moved. It's a course move to where these people are. I have a confrontation with these people. And then I was walking out, and I kept getting attacked by these poltergeists, and I was like, I've already killed these two, like this one poltergeist or these two poltergeists. What the hell is attacking me? And I realized that it looks like the building is set up as a jump puzzle. So that's where I'm at now, where I'm trying to like figure out this friggin' jump puzzle. I'd like to say that this is a side objective and it's one of 3. Technically one of 4, because after I do the 3, I got to return to this dude's lab, which is in a terrible area, and I always get cut to shit because it's surrounded by floating glass, which sucks.
Jesus.
There's this terrifying thing in the game, and it's an anomaly where, so you have an anomaly detector whenever you're walking around, it'll like beep. If you ever watch anyone play Stalker, you'll hear it beep, 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 and it like tells you anomalies nearby. Those do not set off an anomaly, and they are razor sharp shards of glass. And if you run through them, you get all cut up and you start to bleed. And you have to like wrap up. So what you have to do is you have to walk through really slowly. So like crouch walk. In my case, that's what I do. But it's really scary because it doesn't beep. And so I've like run down a bridge and like I'm just hauling ass and I'm looking forward. And all of a sudden I start to like bleed really bad. I'm like, what the hell? And what I've done is I've just like clipped the side of one of these anomalies. I haven't noticed. So I'm like out there still getting shot at, trying to wrap up my wounds because I'm all cut up. It's really scary. Like to think about if that was in real life, it'd be like getting all cut up by this glass. But no, so I'm in a good spot in the game. Like I'm definitely progressing. I'm having a lot of fun, getting distracted a bunch. This game is pretty long. At least for me, it's pretty long.
It's long. Big old game.
It's a big old game. I've seen people on Reddit go like, well, I'm doing, because like you make decisions in the game, and they're like, oh, I'm doing like a ward playthrough, and I'm like, I'm doing a playthrough. Like I don't think I'm gonna come back for a little bit. Like holy crap, what a journey it's already been. And there's definitely been times where I'm walking to an objective, and I look over to the right, and I'm like, looks like a really big building. Open up my map, and I'm like, Christ, there's a big building over there, and it's not my objective. And I'm like, I'm just gonna walk by it. And I start walking by it, and I'm like, let me just open up my scanner, which like scans for artifacts. And sure enough, beep, beep, beep. I'm like, of course. Okay, where's the building entrance? Turn to the right. Into the building we go. And then I'm in there for 2 hours. But no, the game's really good. And one of my favorite things about it, just as a side note, to end this like little segment, is that like the game's pretty difficult. My equipment's getting better and better, so I'm like doing better in the zone. But they balanced the economy really well. At least I think they did. So you can't pick up money from people. I've mentioned that in the past. It's all crypto. It's like a cryptocurrency called credits, I think it's called. Or coupons, sorry. So you have to do missions for people, and people have to like pay or give you coupons. So I like that because it's like, okay, like the only thing I can get from people is stuff that would encumber me, and I have to sell it and I have to find good value for it and things like that. And what I'm finding is I'm always running the race on money. Like I could go out and farm for a while, right? And kind of like RPG it and make a bunch of money and that'd be fine. But I'm trying to have like a legitimate, like just sort of like I'm progressing, doing side stuff, but like progressing all the time. And when I'm doing that, it's balanced just right. Like I'm just on the line where, seeing that building on the right and noticing there's an artifact there. I'm like, that could be a duplicate artifact and that could be 20K. Like I really should go in there and get it. So I think the game is really well balanced like that. And also, I love that whenever you go exploring, you find something. I went and I like cleared out a stash, like I already mentioned. And I looked around and I was like, that was a pretty elaborate stash for just literally like a safe of like consumables. I kept looking around. And then I found a PP-19. And I never had one before. It's mid condition. Never seen one in the game. And I was like, Jesus. And the game like gives you weapons to pace, like kind of pace you as you play. So it's like, hey, here's some armor, here's some guns or whatever. But because I've been vigilant in my exploration, like I am 2 shotguns beyond the shotgun they just gave me. Like he's like, here's this shotgun. I look at him like, I already had this like 10 hours ago.
Yeah.
So like into my stash it goes. But other than that, been doing a little bit of Need for Speed Most Wanted 310, which is on PSP. I continued my old save because I'm just on the first part, and I am absolutely getting my ass kicked. I think I don't know whether I messed up like my upgrades or my car or something, but I cannot beat one of these time trials, so I might just restart the game because like I don't know what I did and my status and all that. And last but not least, been playing. I did a couple rounds of Icarus. Did a little bit of that. Been slowly advancing into the snow biome, getting prepared for that. Fought a big giant worm boss thing. It scared the shit out of me and also destroyed everything I built in a building. That was good. And that's it. That's been my week. Ryan, you are muted if you are speaking because I see you speaking.
Damn it. Well, that's it.
Wait, what did you say? Or was that it?
No, I was doing the closing. That's it.
Oh.
So you could probably watch us playing Monster Hunter Wilds on our Twitch at twitch.tv/day1patchmedia. We stream Wednesdays 9-ish p.m. Eastern.
Between 8 and 9. Sometimes we hop on right away.
No.
Hey, this week we did, but we had a friggin' tutorial to do. To be fair.
That's right. Yeah. All right, we'll see you guys next time.
Hey, yo, peace.
Jeez.